Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the starship Enterprise.
The challenge is to improve yourself, to enrich yourself.
Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
That is the exploration that awaits you. Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Trek Show. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Borg. The Borg is most famously the arch enemy of the Federation, especially in the TNG era. We're going to be talking a little bit about an interesting theory that my cousin Brian has about the Borg that I think that we should definitely have a discussion about. Just quickly, I wanted to say that, we don't know too much about the origins of the Borg, although I have taken a look at a few interesting facts, most notably that the Borg are only about 1,000 years old, according to what I've researched. The Borg have obviously been a very powerful force in the Delta Quadrant and have expanded over the years into the Alpha and have attempted to attack Earth, or at least the Federation, at least twice. Of course, with the Battle of Wolf 359, Sector 001, which took place in First Contact, in the beginning of First Contact with the Enterprise E. Little is known about the Borg other than they're very powerful. We know that they have a queen. Actually, I guess you could say multiple queens, because we have, of course, a queen in First Contact, and we also have a queen in Voyager, which both were destroyed. There's still a lot to know about the Borg, and especially with their origin, I think that it's interesting to look into that and exactly what the Borg are all about. First Contact, the Borg traveled through time along with the Enterprise E, went back the ending of World War III on Earth, which they attempted to assimilate Earth, which obviously failed. We know in First Contact that they had sent a signal out to contact the Borg in that era, and perhaps I think there's a theory that particular signal is what attracted the Borg into the Alpha Quadrant in the first place. Of course, that's a theory, but it's an interesting one. Of course, we have the leftovers of Borg technology, particular actual living Borg, which we saw in Enterprise. And of course, we have probably the biggest threat to the Borg, Species 8472 from Voyager. I'm assuming that they were probably the only species to be a major threat to the Borg. Other than, the Federation has taken a lot of damage from the Borg, but have also been able to go toe-to-toe with them from time to time. With that being said, I could list facts all day, but let's get into the theory. Brian, you mentioned an interesting theory to me, and I'd like to get your take on that.
Sure. Well, they're always portrayed as the villain, the antagonist, but my theory is that they're not evil. They're not necessarily the bad guys. They are opposite to the Federation and how they go about what they do by forcing assimilation on others, but I don't think they do it with evil intent. In fact, in many ways, they're pretty much exactly the same as the Federation. They go about their business a bit differently, and that's my theory. The way we can look at it is, what does the Federation do when they explore through space? They meet people, they learn about their cultures. Everyone in Roddenberry's utopian society, everyone has a place, everyone has value, everyone's important whether they're disabled or not. Gender, color, race, species, doesn't matter. Everyone's important, one has something to contribute. And if you look at it like that, the Borg really aren't any different. Everyone matters. They don't wantonly kill people. They try to assimilate them. They take the best of everyone's culture and they bring it into their own. They look after their sick. In fact, they do better. They replace sick parts with machine parts. Everyone has an education because they're all educated by the Borg Collective. Everyone's equal. I don't think the bad guys, from their point of view, they're doing what they think is best, and they think it's best that everyone gets upgraded and has a place, just like the Cybermen that they ripped off from Doctor. And yes, I had to throw a Doctor Who comment in there.
Of course. It's interesting that you should bring up about an education, per se, because one of the facts that I had looked up that the Borg actually, all the information that they take in, they retain all the way from the beginning of their origins. And from every culture that they have ever assimilated, they've retained that information. Now, how exactly they incorporate that into their society, I think is up for debate, because, you know, we see the Borg as, I mean, maybe this is just coming from the view of the Federation. They appear to be mindless automatons. Like you say, they don't discriminate when it comes to assimilation and, I guess you could say, perfecting their existence. Although I would argue that, yes, that is true, that they, you know, that is their purpose, is that they want to perfect their existence and knowledge of the universe, taking in information from all these cultures. The major factor here is that they force this onto other cultures. They do it violently, and they, you know, this includes kidnapping, like abduction, very traumatic and very violent way of doing this. And basically the Borg say that, well, this is for your own good. This is to improve your life. The Borg, because they're independent and they feel that this is the right way to go, and they're going to force their way onto these cultures. So I'm just curious, Brian, what your response to that is. You know, if the Borg were asking people to join, or asking cultures to join, rather than taking them by force, I think there's a difference there. What would you say to that?
Oh, I agree. There is. It's a big difference, and that's the rift. The Federation gives species the choice. Do you want to join the Federation or not? The Borg doesn't give that choice. But from the Borg's point of view, they feel that upgrade that they receive, that collective knowledge, is a superior way to live, and it's a better way to live. Work together to make, in their opinion, a better society. So I don't think they're motivated evilly. I think their motivations I would consider to be definitely amoral. But from their point of view, they're not doing anything wrong. They legitimately want the best for everybody, and that's the way to do it. And that's why I don't think that they're evil. I think from the Federation's point of view, what they do is evil, but I don't think in themselves they're evil. I don't think that they're going in, like, say, the Daleks would, that would just kill everything that's unlike them. They're not like that at all. They legitimately want what's best for everybody. And there was one thing that you had brought up earlier I wanted to just quickly address, how that they were like 1,000 years old, and every species that they assimilate, all their knowledge is maintained and is part of the collective. And it reminds me of a quote that those who do not remember history are doomed to repeat it. The Federation repeatedly makes the same mistakes over and over again.
What do you think, Matt? What do you think of Brian's theory?
It's a very interesting theory, and I kind of agree what he means by, like, the point of the Borg is they want to become the best of the best, become the most advanced society. So what they think is right is just by going to species or planet to planet, assimilate them, get their knowledge, and then everybody in the Borg collective will get it, right? Because it's one mind, right? From Borg's perspective, they think they're doing the right thing. But as you kind of said, Andrew, is like, well, it's against most people's will, right? Like, I don't want to be part of the Borg collective. I don't want to become one mind. I want to have my own free will. If you remember from Voyager 7 and 9, that was a prime example of it, right? Because she was a Borg, and then they were able somehow to slowly remove her from the collective, and then she managed to become herself again, right? So, yeah, interesting take.
I think that it comes down to, for every great villain, they're the hero of their own story. They think that they're doing the right thing. The first example would be Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He thinks that wiping out half the universe is a good thing and will help the universe, where, of course, the universe doesn't think that's the case.
Well, half the universe doesn't.
Yeah, half the universe. It's no doubt that the Borg think they're doing the right thing. And I think it would be very interesting and who knows, maybe the fact that the origin of the Borg being a mystery, maybe that just adds to the interest of that species, because we don't know much about where they came from. It'd be interesting to know, like in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Planet of Machines, where Voyager got captured, and I don't know if that maybe is related. Perhaps it's something completely different.
But it would be very interesting if Voyager or the race or whatever you want to call them were behind it in some way. That would be interesting.
We've only heard about that once, that Voyager had come across this Planet of Machines. They had reprogrammed Voyager, and then Voyager became this massive, some type of hybrid artificial life. It's interesting because, we don't know much about where the Borg came from, how they started. Was this simply just organic beings, experimenting with transhumanism and merging with machines, and then it went off from there? Or was this started by machines? It's an interesting concept to think about.
They're a direct ripoff of the Cybermen from Doctor Who. I'll just give you a brief history of how the Cybermen came about, story-wise and writing-wise, and it would fit with the Borg perfectly well. But I just up front, I'd like to say that with the Borg, I think it's best to keep it a mystery of their origin, because that makes them, I don't know, just seem more frightening in a way. So how the Cybermen were created is Dr. Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis were hired to write the last First Doctor story in 1966. And Dr. Kit Pedler, learning of how they were doing transplants, organ transplants with patients and how great that was, he actually saw it as a horrible thing and developed the Cybermen, which were people just like us. They were from a twin planet called Mondas, which was basically Earth's twin. Due to pollution, the populace started getting they started replacing parts with machine parts, and then they realized it was emotions that were their greatest weakness, so they were programmed to not have any. They put inhibitors on their brains so there would be no emotions. And Dr. Pett, when he was writing this, thought that this was the scariest thing that humans could become, because they're no longer human. They're more machine now than man. Twisted, but not necessarily evil. That was his greatest fear, of humans becoming that. And that's what it appears on the surface is what the Borg are. There were regular people that have been upgraded to what would be considered a superior being, but from the humanity point of view, it's horrible. You lose your individuality. You lose what it is to be human. Just imagine, say, a Klingon who has been assimilated by the Borg. And Klingons are fierce. They can be full of rage. I would imagine being in the Borg, all that is suppressed or removed outright. That would be torture if they're aware of it. If they're not aware of it, then they've ceased to be what they were altogether. And to me, that is kind of cruel. Back to Dr. Kit Pedler with that was his greatest fear, is that we would lose our humanity trying to make ourselves better by removing our human parts with plastic and machines, and then gradually changing our brain to remove any suffering from that, having emotion.
I mean, that's a good point, and I'll just I think I'll just say briefly that, when you're assimilated by the Borg, even though that they force a certain value system on you when you're assimilated, you lose some parts of you as well. Obviously, you lose that emotion and what it is to essentially be human. Like we're not robots. We have very strong emotions that are, well, for not for everybody, but
Yeah.
for humanity, we're born with a balance between emotion and logic, and complement each other. Where the Borg will take that emotion away from you, almost the spiritual element of humanity from you. The Borg have their own way of looking at things, and they have their own perfection, I guess you could say. But you also lose a lot too.
Makes them a mirror image of the Federation, because the Federation does the same thing, but gives you the choice, leaves you your autonomy, but they try to bring in cultures to make the Federation better, to help improve everyone in the whole, which is exactly the same as the Borg. I think intention-wise, they're not different. They're one's an antagonist and portrayed as a villain, but aren't necessarily evil, just misguided in how they do it. The Borg Queen seems to have all of her emotions, which kind of puts a bit of a wrench in the theory, too, because it makes it out that they're not actually all equal. They're all governed by a single mind, which kind of takes things out a bit.
Well, do you think that not having a queen would make the Borg better? The queen is really the wrench in the gears. And, here's the queen who has this autonomy over the rest of the collective. And almost like, instead of when we first saw the Borg in TNG, we didn't know about a queen, and it was sort of the Borg acted as one entity, a collective thinking, where now they have a leader. So it's
Well, there's one way to fix that. First Contact is not canon. Problem solved.
Really? You're gonna wipe out First Contact from canon?
No, of course. I don't know.
They'll have to wipe out Voyager too.
I have no problem with that. I'm being facetious. Yeah, it does put a wrench in it, unless once again that is actually the Queen's motivation too. They're making the Borg more like bees or ants, moving away from the Cybermen, because the Cybermen don't have a queen or a king or anything like that. And I think that makes them more interesting when they have a singular focus like that, like one person making the decisions. I could see that more as actually getting things done instead of just aimlessly wandering through space looking for people to assimilate. Said that if the modus operandi of the Borg is the same as what we saw before we got a Borg Queen, of just exploring the universe, assimilating species to improve ourselves, then I have no problem with the Borg Queen. The theory still holds.
The mystery of the Borg is certainly part of why they're so liked by people. I think that in a certain way, some mystery, makes them a little more intriguing. It's a great theory, and I think that it's true for them, for the Borg's point of view. I think they do see themselves as the, I guess you could say, the saviors of the universe.
They're colonialists.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, the comparisons between them and the Federation, too. They both have the same value system in terms of what they have to offer. Their approaches are radically different. Well, thank you, Brian, for sharing your theory, and I think it's very interesting. I don't know if we're going to see them again. I don't know if I really want to see them in Discovery, because I feel like if that actually happened, that would be...
They'll fuck it up.
Eh?
They'll fuck it up.
Of course they will. Because it would be... They wouldn't be inserting it for, to incorporate a decent story. It would be because they're in the writer's room and they're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we put the Borg in this?
And Michael can trip on something and save the day.
Of course. And thank you, Matt, for joining us.
Yep, no worries.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us in this discussion. If you like this video, make sure that you give it a like. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe. And as always, keep it locked on the Andrew K channel.
Space, the final frontier. These are the continuing voyages of the starship Enterprise.
The challenge is to improve yourself, to enrich yourself.
Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
That is the exploration that awaits you. Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.